Hello my 7 deadly sins family and friends, welcome back to another video. I apologise for no camera today. We're currently moving things around in our home in preparation for my second child. So I'll hopefully have that back in, I'll hopefully have my webcam back very soon. But still I wanted to bring you some content that I have been asked to talk about. That being Sword and Shield Escanor. A lot of people have recently requested how to build this, especially with the leaderboard of Galland and how he could be quite useful for this, could be in quite fast times in comparison to the axe if you have a low potential maybe. So here we are. If you have a quick look at the team that I'm showcasing, you might be a bit surprised seeing Hendrickson here, but I will explain each of them now. So we obviously have Sword and Shield Escanor. We've got Elizabeth. If you don't understand what Elizabeth does just yet, we're going to use her holy side, and basically what she does is she's going to increase defense up to 40% to all allies, and Escanor Sword and Shield is all scaled off defense, so this is really nice. Her special attack decreases enemies' defense by 20%, and then we will be getting some crit damage from her healing ability on her normal skill as well. This also heals an absolute ton, and she gives a lot of damage reduction and other damage increases as well. We're going to use Staff Merlin to burst for us. With the staff, I don't have any burst efficiency on this whatsoever, but I actually made this in its stead. I was only having the SR weapon at the time because I was helping people in the pledge raids earlier. So we're going to try and fire burst as fast as possible, and because I've got her PD and she does a decent amount of damage, I am running the Black Flame Wing staff because when she bursts she's going to get a bunch of attack and crit chance as well as a decent amount of crit damage, so then we can use her free ultimate to do a little bit extra damage, which is quite nice. So on top of that, if we look at her skills, she reduces fire resistance, which is quite nice, and then within her potentials she increases fire heroes crit damage. Even though we're not focusing on crit for his sword and shield in this certain build, it is still quite nice, so then when he does crit, it does boost his damage, and also she gives allies max HP on top of that. And then lastly, Hendrickson. We're going to be using his light weapon, and I know he is there to use for healing and healing efficiency, which is okay, is really not necessary. He also helps us with our magic gauge, which is quite nice, but the main thing we use him for is his skill to give us an extra 20% defense for 40 seconds. Now there is another option, a couple of options you can do. You can go with Gila Sword and Shield for a barrier, which also gives you an extra 30% fire damage, and you can then rotate her shields and Escanor shields, so you'll have a shield up at all times. Or if you want to carry on with the defense route, we can use Sword and Shield Armour. His passive gives an increase of defense by 15% when allies have barrier, so that's going to be pretty much up the whole time, not the 40%, but it is 5% less. On top of that, with his engraved gear, he has a low chance of 10% to increase all allies heroes defense by 50%. If this is level 3, it goes up to 60%, which is huge, and also gives barrier as well. So he's obviously a very good option to have in your team as well. But because I want the short burst of the guaranteed extra 20%, I've chosen to go with Hendrickson and to have that magic gauge, so then we can basically spam ultimates as much as we like. Now let's go over to Escanor, and we have a quick look at his skills. Escanor's passive gains 1 preheat stack every 1 second while a barrier is active, a maximum of 10 times. Each stack increases defense by 10%, so that will be 100% defense buff, and then whilst you have overheat you also get 10% fire damage. Escanor's normal attack does 86% of defense as damage, or 100% whilst overheat is active. This is the main reason why we're going for the Breath of Glory normal attack build, because you're going to be attacking so much and doing so much defensive damage with all the buffs that you get, and it is very, very strong and very, very consistent. Escanor's special attack grants all allied heroes fire barriers equal to 210% of defense for 20 seconds, then inflicts damage equal to 110% of defense, and while you have overheat, it inflicts damage equal to 125% of defense, removes 2 preheat stacks, and increases all allied heroes fire damage by 25% for 20 seconds. His normal skill inflicts damage equal to 145% of defense, then taunts enemies for 10 seconds, but whilst in overheat it inflicts damage equal to 170% of defense, removes 3 preheat stacks, then decreases fire resistance by 30% for 20 seconds. His ultimate gains overheat for 20 seconds and inflicts damage equal to 210% of defense. Whilst overheat is active though, it inflicts damage equal to 240% of defense, removes 5 preheat stacks, inflicts additional damage equal to 300% of defense, then removes overheat. So very big damage. So with that being said, that's all of his skills. What do we want to build with him? We of course want fire damage increase. Normal skill damage and ultimate damage are very, very good also, but now you might wonder why I'm running the Breath of Glory instead of, say, a Black Flame or something. Well, we're not going to be bursting with him, so we're not going to get the bonus, and also each time we attack we're going to get elemental damage with this sword, and a very small percentage of attack is actually transferred into the damage of these defensive skills. Now we're getting a lot of normal attack damage, and why is this important? If we actually look at his basic info and look at his normal attack, when you're in overheat, it inflicts damage equal to 100% of defense. So you're actually going to be doing a lot of damage with his normal attacks. And that is why using the Breath of Glory Sword and Shield is actually better damage overall than if you're going to go for a crit build. So with all that being said, let's have a look at a couple of rotations you can do. So I will see you within the battle trial. So you can hear my voice when I first recorded this, so I'm going to do a bit of a voiceover, but basically I'm saying is that we're going to want to get the defense from Hendrickson and going to switch to Merlin. We're going to Q and then use both her E's, and we're going to try and burst as fast as possible and then use her ultimate for the crit damage buff. We're going to switch to Elizabeth, heal for more crit damage, and use Q to get the buffs and debuffs down. We're going to then Q with Escanor to shield and then do a bunch of attacks to get full stacks, and then after that's done we're going to then E and then ultimate. This will get our Q and E back up, so we're going to press Q and then E and then we're going to ult again, because we've got it, and that does a massive amount of damage until about 1.2 1.3 million damage in the battle trial. And then you're going to use your Q again, and then you're going to switch out and you can rinse and repeat basically. Again, the burst up and the debuffs and the buffs from everyone, and back to Elizabeth and use her buffs and debuffs and stuff, and then back to Escanor, and then you can go through his rotation, attacking a bunch and then using his skills, going to the ultimate and then using his skills again, and then doing a final nuke with his ultimate. So that's one way you can do it, and then there's another way you can do it where you want Escanor to be out on the field a lot longer. I'm probably explaining here why Fire Burst is so important. So with Fire Burst, each hit of on a Fire Bursted enemy does an extra instance of fire damage. And with Escanor, you're going to have tons and tons of hits with him, and it's going to proc this Fire Burst over and over again. So it is really, really strong, and another reason why his normal attack build is so strong and consistent. You're not relying on crits. Yes, you'll crit every now and then, but you'll just do a ton of damage. I just saw him do 1 million damage there with just his E. And here I am basically explaining you can keep Escanor on the field for a lot longer and still do a ton of damage, but you need to keep an eye on your buffs in this instance, so then they don't run out, and then you can refresh them at a good time. Now, whilst this plays out, I'm going to also explain what you would do if you're going to use Grimoire or Gila, for example. So if you use Gila, you would start out the fight and use her shield, and then instead of using Escanor shield straight away, you can use all of his other skills, and then when Gila's shield runs out, that is when you use Escanor's shield. And then you're just basically repeating and rotating each other's shield. And then if you use Grimoire, all you do is basically bring him in, spam his abilities and get out. You don't really want him on the field very long whatsoever, because all you're doing is there for his passive and a bit of magic charge efficiency. But you'll also notice, if you play it in this way, that you can have so much magic gauge that you can even use Merlin's ultimate even if you haven't bursted. So if the burst has lasted too long and you're back to Merlin again, you can probably ult with her, just because you get so much magic charge and ult gauge with this build. And then you just keep going ham with Escanor. It's basically impossible for you to die. And then if you do get too low, because you have so much magic charge efficiency, you can use Elizabeth's ultimate. Now, a lot of people might question, why are we not using Elizabeth's ultimate for the fire attack? Well, the fire attack literally does nothing for him because he's scaled on defense. So you're literally wasting that fire attack if you do use her ultimate for that. So we've looked how we want to roll with his sword and shield. We've talked about how defense is very important and how we want fire damage, normal skill, ultimate damage and normal attack damage. Ultimate damage I prefer over the normal skill, but this is what I got and I'm decently happy with it. Now for his armour, there are some options. If you want to go a lot into the normal attack damage, this is a fantastic top to run because it gives so much normal attack damage and a little bit of crit damage. Okay, and then other than that, you can try and get as much defense as possible, but what I quite like to do is to go into the normal skill damage because it does a decent amount of damage. It really does a good chunk amount of damage. And then I go to 3-piece Corrupted Watcher to get some nice offensive stats and then the all damage percentage. Now if you want to be more defense focused and you haven't done the raid pledges or not lucky enough to get the raid pledge pieces, then of course we'd probably run a 4-piece Immortal Watcher to get defense increase and then this defense bleed, which actually is really, really nice. And then you can run this 3-piece as well on the side. Now if you do have the raid pieces, then you would probably want to switch out to have like a 160 raid top, a 160 raid boots and a 160 raid necklace, because that gives you just so much defense. And then obviously on his engraved gear we want ultimate damage, defense percent, normal skill damage, that kind of stuff. Right, let's us showcase. Now do be aware I've got very high potentials on these units, so your damage might not quite match this, but it should still give you a good example of how it can do. So we will of course want to pre-buff. We're going to use Escanor's skill just so then he would get more magic charge. I'm not going to bother bursting, but I am going to switch back to Escanor, right? I'm going to wait to be hit so I get a damage buff. Right, I'm going to get hit, I'm going to use my E and the R, I'm going to Q, and the E again and the ult, and then he's dead. Right, before he was able to jump off, this was probably the worst animation that I could have gotten. His skill, that he's going to twizzle around and then jump away, but because of the amount of buffs I get, the debuffs we put on him, we just do an insane amount of damage. And that is without any ultimate move damage buffs, right? If you had ultimate move damage buffs, it would hit even harder. Now, Galland is weak to fire, so why don't we hop into the raid? I'm going to probably cut here until we get to the bishop, you know, because that's the one he's got a lot of attack, a lot of defenses, and we'll see how he goes when you are versus a fire resistant buffed enemy. So I'll see you in a second. So just to showcase that I am on Abyss, you can see the pledges window pop up. Just to showcase that we are on Abyss, but I'm just going to skip here again until we are at the bishop. So here we are at just under 28 minutes. I didn't face the rook just because it's just an absolute pain to deal with. But let's see how fast we take this boss out. Right?
At dawn I kneel to none. The gold wakes up in me. One step and shadows crack like glass beneath my feet. I wear my pride like fire, a crown no one can take. When I lift up my head, the whole sky starts to shake. The road bows down when I come near. Your kings grow small, I have no fear. Escanor, I decide the day. Escanor, watch the dark run away. When I rise, you fall. When I speak, they all obey. Escanor, only I decide. My name is carved in heat on every wall I pass. A smile can melt steel. A glance.
So we literally did it in 2 minutes. It took us only 2 minutes with the Sword and Shield Escanor, not max weapon, and fire resisted buffed enemy with an extra buttload of defense, and was able to shred through such a top tier boss, right? So this goes to show that Sword and Shield Escanor is a real monster. He basically is unkillable and you still do a stupid amount of damage. So let's leave here and do a recap. So let's recap. Sword and Shield Escanor, we want to aim for as much defense as possible. We're going to use a Breath of Glory Sword and Shield. His other two weapons really don't matter too much because he's all defense focused. For his armor, you can go for the Tyrant Black Heart Top with some normal skill of the next 3 pieces and Corrupted Watcher of the other 3 accessories, or you can go for a 4-piece Watcher and then the Corrupted Watcher 3-piece. You can then, if you are lucky enough to have the raid sets, you can go the 160 raid top, raid boots and raid necklace. And then if you do go that, then you can pretty much wear any belt you like with Silent Watcher bottoms for a bit more normal skill damage, and then you would switch the Corrupted Watcher earrings to the Dark Chaos earrings for a bit more crit chance and a bit extra crit defense shred, and still run the Corrupted Watcher ring. On the engraved gear, we're still looking for defense percentage, we're looking for ultimate move damage, normal skill damage, and that's that. The weapon rolls and chance, we want to look for fire damage, ult damage, normal attack, normal skill, defense. Any assortment of those lots are going to be very good. Now you might wonder, what about fire attack? This is a useless stat. It does not increase his damage whatsoever. So even if you have a P7 Elizabeth, using her ultimate to give 30% elemental attack will not help Sword and Shield Escanor. I hope this video has been helpful for those that were wondering and wanted me to showcase it. If it has, let me know in the comments. If you think I've missed something or there's other stuff that could be better, please do share it in the comments, because that makes it so then we can all learn, and I'm more than happy to be proven wrong. I'm happy to admit that, and if it is better, I will be sure to pin your comment. Do consider subscribing. One thing before I go, I will be announcing a giveaway very, very soon. We have hit 1,000 subscribers, and I can't thank you guys enough for the immense support that you have given me. It really does mean the world to me. So I want to give back to you guys a little something. I will be giving away a Hawk Pass and then 2 supply carts. So be sure to be looking out for more news on that in the near future. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and cheerio!